Good evening to all the viewers who are watching live and will be watching on a on a recorded version. Sorry for this much late, as we were facing some issues from our end, but we have resolved it. And our literally it was time, but since we were facing some technical issues, so we did some late things. Okay, so wasting any sorry for wasting so much time. Hmm. So let's just start with the 30 seconds countdown time. Sir, আপনি start করুন sir.
Should I start now?
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, sir. We
Good
are
evening.
having facing challenges with the network issues from the speakers area as well as from uh, other ends. Uh, Challenges will be there, but we have to overcome all that. Uh, Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Now, today we are on the 66th online live CME, and tonight we have a very important topic, and which is very essential for all the homeopaths. National Institute of Homeopathic Alumni Association had started its journey in 1975. Alumni Association had started its journey in 1988, and among all the other functions, we are now conducting by the inspiration from our previous MOS, Sir Shripad Yeshu Naik, sir, Minister of Ayush, and Vaidya Rajesh Kotecha, sir, Secretary Ayush. We have started our offline CME, and we have conducted 19 offline CME at NIH. Now, since COVID, we had been conducting online CME, and today is the 66th online CME. To inaugurate tonight's CME, with the permission of Kalyani, sir, your permission, sir,
Sure.
we are going to call a very young blood, the 28th batch doctor from NIH, who will introduce himself. Dr. Souvik, please be on screen. Dr. Souvik Halder, you are the inaugurator tonight. The stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, sir, for inviting me in today's online CME session. And myself, Dr. Souvik Halder from National Institute of Homeopathy, 27 Batch UG, would like to welcome and greet you good evening to all the respected teachers, juniors, seniors, and all the viewers who are watching live today. And thanks to Dr. Bidyut, sir, and Dr. Narayan Kalyani, sir. And as we all know that totality of symptoms are the main aspect in selecting the homeopathic medicine, or rather making the prescription, we all know during our practice. So, and why only the homeopaths are bound to it and why not all the other pathics? So here, today's discussion about why the homeopaths are bound to totality of symptoms are going to be discussed by our respected speaker, Dr. Krishna Mohan Das, sir, Principal of Northeast Homeopathic Medical College and Hospital, Itanagar, Arunachal Pradesh. So, without further delaying, uh, let me hand over the mic to our today's respected moderator, sir, Professor Dr. Arijit Pal Choudhary, sir, Reader and H.O.D, Department of Gynaecology and Obstetrics of Bengal Homeopathic Medical College and Hospital, Asansol. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Today's topic, what we are going to discuss today regarding the why we the homeopaths bound to the totality of the symptoms. It's a very burning question to each and every homeopath, because since our joining in homeopathy, from the very first day, we are just uh, very much popular with the particular phrase in homeopathy, that is the totality of symptoms. We know that each and every science has got its own jargon, that is typical terminologies which are used in that particular field of science. And this totality of symptoms is basically is very restricted to the use of in the homeopathic field rather. So there are so much confusion amongst the students, even amongst the many practitioners, that how we should proceed with the totality of the symptoms, how it is made with, how to make the totality in our clinical practices. So even the interns, after passing all the years of examinations, when they approach to the clinical bedside alone, then they also feel somewhat shaky, because they can collect all the symptoms, that is the summation of the symptoms, but making the totality is an art. It requires many analogy, it requires many analysis. And so this topic is very interesting, I think. And the today's speaker is also a very senior one. And I think he will discuss everything in detail regarding the totality of the symptoms. And we are just looking forward to get his personal experience, as well as how the totality is to be met with the different arrays of symptoms, because all the collection of the symptoms never met the totality. It's an artistic combinations, and what to be taken and what to not to be taken, that is very important. So I request our speaker, Dr. Krishna Mohan Das, the principal of the Northeast University in Arunachal Pradesh, to proceed with his presentation. Over to Dr. Krishna Mohan Das. There are some technical problem, and as well as some network problems. So please bear with us. We are also trying hard to get in touch with you. Dr. Dash is trying his best to be in touch with us.
Hello, good evening. Hello.
Yes, hello, Dr. Dash, you can proceed. Uh,
Hello.
yes, we can hear you. You can proceed.
Hello. Good evening. May I audible?
Sir, there are some technical issues, I guess, with your internet, sir. Krishna Mohan, sir. Uh,
আমার কথা
হ্যাঁ, শোনা যাচ্ছে।
হ্যাঁ, অরিজিৎ তো ইন্ট্রোডাকশনটা করে দিল। এবার আমি শুরু করবো কি? আচ্ছা, পুরো ইংলিশ বাংলা মিলিয়ে করবো না ইংরেজিতে বলবো?
It's better you proceed in English, because most of the audience. Yes.
English.
Okay.
Sorry, we are facing a lot of challenges with the network delay of Geo network from Itanagar, where Professor Krishna Mohan Das is trying to speak. Uh, I'll request in between Dr. Arijit Choudhary to discuss on the topic with Kalyani sir, so that in between I'm trying to get in touch with Dr. Krishna Mohan Das, or shall I request Dr. Pralay Sharma, who is in the studio now, to come forward and share his appeal. Dr. Krishna Mohan Das is there. I can see Dr. Krishna Mohan Das is there. Pralay is there. Pralay,
And
if you can say a few words about the Alumni Association and our activities, our work. Dr. Pralay Sharma, the senior most Deputy Medical Superintendent and in charge of the hospital activities of National Institute of Homeopathy. God is taking a task on us. Dr. Krishna Mohan Das is there. Pralay got disconnected again.
Dr. Bidyut Mukherjee,
Yes, sir.
one thing can be done if possible. He can proceed only audio system,
Yeah,
excluding the video.
that's
Sometimes this
what I'm
happens.
trying to tell.
Then
Without his
yeah,
picture,
yeah,
he can
yes,
go on with the audio only.
yes, because sometimes the combination makes it's difficult for the connections. Yes.
Right. Dr. Krishnamohan Das, sir, if you can hear us, or Orko, if you can guide him on the second number. Orko, if
To
you
stop
can
the
guide
cam.
sir
Yeah.
Okay,
on the second number.
okay.
In between Dr. Arijit sir and Kalyani sir, you can discuss on the topic and other aspects, either on the topic or on the CME, the utility of CME, the appeal for the speakers from all the PG, UG batches.
Yes, Dr. Kolani, you can just speak about.
Thank you. This is repetition of the previous requested that this is one type of CME which is not usually available in homeopathic system of medicine. Why I am telling this thing? Because the most possible brilliant brains of homeopathy has come under a platform, National Institute of Homeopathy Alumni Association, and they are trying to share their experiences to enrich all of us. It's a great chance for us to contribute something to homeopathy for which we are living. At the same time, it's a great opportunity to work, to devote for homeopathy jointly by sharing our experiences and knowledges. See, our homeopathic system of medicine is a complete struggle system. If we start from the first day when our master found in Carnation Medical that Cinchona produce malaria-like symptoms, from that very day, our master started struggle, striving and struggle, experiment, observation, inferences, continuous procedure. The result we have found that there are 5 editions of our medicine, 6 was after Hillman. So continuous evolution process. Today's subject is a great subject because in conclusion, after so many editions, after so many experiences of brilliant stalwarts of the world, and our experiences too, we are far to conclude. Rather, it is the only way out for homeopathic success to have case taking. All the stalwarts are in same decision that a well taken case means half the case is cured. Case taking will tell you the drug, not brain of the doctor. That means case taking will guide us to evaluation, evaluation will guide us to repatriation, repatriation will guide us to Mathematica, then final prescription, final medicine selection, and expected confirmed improvement. In our homeopathy system of medicine, what we are lacking than that of the conventional system of medicine, that is, we are not that much confident. We are not able to tell the patient that on tomorrow morning your fever will come down. We are not able to tell the patient that within 3 months you will find changes in your gallbladder. We are not able to tell them confidently that your hemoglobin level will come up within 1 month, within 2 months. This type of confidence reply from the doctors are very much lacking in our system. Not because we are lack of knowledge, we don't have knowledge. Not because our homeopathy system is limited. Not because it is simply a placebo effect as it is called by the so-called persons. But because we are not that much attentive, that much serious for case taking. Case taking means individualization. Individualization means to particularize a person from all other persons regarding their disease to come to a perfect conclusion of mathematical prescription. If we see the history, primarily there is no case taking, simply drugs first in the mother tincture form or chemical form which was given to the patient. Changes were found by our tollwards. Then gradually procedure of potentization started, and our father like tollwards, they found that potentized medicine, that means reduction of quantity, increases the capacity of the activities. By this way, potentization started. Gradually, 6 principles of homeopathic system of medicine have evolved. Not that it was dreamed and expressed by many tollwards all over the world for years together. That was experimented, tested, observed, and inferenced. That is why whatever we are doing, our prime target will be case taking in details. We should not keep a single stone to unturned. Definitely there is a format, but we should not only be limited within the formats of case taking, but we'll keep our mind open, ear, eyes, senses open and transparent to find out uncommon symptoms of the patient by collecting symptom totality. Numerically, it is said that case taking is a lengthy procedure, a time-consuming procedure. It is not possible for all the cases in chamber or in hospitals where there is much rush. But it is not that fact. There are cases that is called acute cases, subacute cases. Their case taking is limited. Accordingly, you can case taking with a shorter period. But where the particular typical homeopathic cure is necessary, that means miasmatic chronic diseases, that means refused cases, that means so-called incurable cases, where the only reply is homeopathy, there we must be very, very cautious. That is the chronic disease. We cannot do anything except taking the cases in details. It is time consuming for the beginners. As we have seen, when we start writing alphabets in our very early age, A, B was a very difficult task to write on the paper by pen and pencil. Then it was very difficult to make a word. We were many times rebuked, beaten, punished, because we were not able to write a word.
Sir, now we have been able to connect Dr. Krishna Mohan Das without the video.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Can you hear us? Professor Das, can you hear us?
Dr.
Krishna Mohan Das, can you hear us? Dr. Das, can you hear us? Dr. Krishna Mohan Das, can you hear us, please? Uh, okay, Kalyani sir, you continue. I am trying to reconnect him again.
Just tell me.
You please continue. I am trying to reconnect him again.
When we are taking the case history, we may have to follow the chronological order, but keeping our five senses open to receive any type of uncommon symptom from the patient. That means case taking start when patient is waiting outside the cubicles or outside the chamber. How he is talking with others, how he is behaving, how patient or impatient he is, then how he is entering in the chamber of cubicles, how he is sitting, how he is putting his hands, how he is moving his body, how is his or her expression of face, look, luster of hairs, dress, how he's sitting, how he's talking, means every detail. We are simply searching anything uncommon in any regard, physical, mental, or in any point of view. Case taking is very difficult, as you are feeling, for the beginners definitely, because they have to follow the points one after another. But if you practice the alphabet spelling, the writing a single alphabet was very difficult in the early ages. Writing of word was very difficult in our early ages. Writing the correct sentence, writing correct sentence was difficult for us in early life. But nowadays it is no matter. Within fraction of minutes, within fraction of seconds, we can complete those difficult tasks nowadays very smoothly without taking any strain. Similarly, as a beginner, if we concentrate on detailed case taking, if we go on practicing this detailed case taking to find out the perfect evaluatory symptom for a pathologization, then gradually we find that case taking will be very much easy, very quick, not consuming much time, and very much easy for all of us, rather the so-called
Sir,
deep learning. Here, Joy.
sir, sorry to interrupt. Professor Krishna Mohan Das, can you hear us? Alberta, can you hear us? Alberta, আমাদের শুনতে পাচ্ছেন? Dr. Krishna
There's
Mohan
some
Das, can you hear us? Sir, continue, please.
anyway, we are sorry because network system is not within our control. Many times we are facing these constraints, especially from the speakers from periphery of the country. But it is our promise. We are confident that we will continue instead of all constraints.
বলো
Okay, please come. He's audible now.
না, everyone can see you and hear you. আমি তো কোনো কিছু পাচ্ছি না।
We are able to hear you. Yes, yes, we are able to hear you.
You are audible.
Okay, okay.
You can continue.
So may I continue?
শোনা যাচ্ছে। Continue.
Hello.
Yes,
Dr. Das, you can continue,
Good
please.
evening, everybody, and I'm very sorry to say that network problem. It was little bit late. Anyway, first of all, I thank to everybody for my core of art. Anyway, topic is very much prime importance for a homeopath. Basically, one thing I cleared that caption was why we the homeopath bound to make totality of the symptom. That it should be clear that why not I write down the homeopathic physician or doctor, because homeopath and homeopathic physician or doctors critical differentiation, because those who are already passed from DMS or DPNIH, MD, PhD like that, we always recognize as a homeopathic physician or doctor like that. But we came across that few even remote village of homeopathic doctor, and even some allopathic doctor used to practice with the following the law of principle of similia, and they make all time that totality of the symptoms. Anyway, we should first clear that why the essentiality of the totality of the symptoms. First of all, that we always came across that homeopathy is a science and art. That if we came across or gone through the organ of medicine, that in section 6, that it is related with the portrait of the disease. That if we want to make any portrait anyone, we need pencil, papers, color, like that. So whenever we want to make a portrait of the disease, we always, with the help of anatomy, physiology, gynecology, pathology, practice of medicine, surgery, and this is the mostly related with the science, because many things we can prove scientifically. But the section 7 is related with the totality of the symptoms. So it is mostly related with the art part of the homeopathy, because and here very crucially and critically works two words, that the moreover. Whenever we complete the portrait of the disease, then we need to complete every bit of the symptoms, and then we have to ask some precise question to the patient to complete our total of the symptoms. Here we always, when I was students, that I asked my teacher, all the homeopaths shouting and related with the totality of the symptoms. What it actually means? Many authors in our homeopathy, they are giving different definitions, different mode of making totality of the symptoms. But my teacher, in a sentence, he defined the totality of the symptoms. That is, we always make the characteristic totality. That patient will take told lots of 150, more than 100 is complaint, but we have to make it characteristic. Through characteristic symptoms, we make not only the patient, and we also characterize our homeopathic medicine. In my PG, my thesis paper was visualizations. So until unless we make totality of the symptoms, we never make the individuality. And individualization is a prime and foremost important to our homeopathic prescription, because our cardinal principle related with the single medicine. So we have so many proof medicines. Out of 3,000, 4,000 medicine, we have to pick out one medicine. So totality is the criteria which leads to make individualizations. So totality of the symptom should be, and I found in remote village many homeopaths also try to make totality, but unfortunately in our qualified homeopaths, they have a very much profound knowledge in disease like that, and picking up some one or two symptoms they spontaneously prescribe. But practice life and those we are related to the institutions, we have to clear up before our internal students like that, how we can make a prescription with these symptoms. So it is our having some intuitions, and even Master Handyman was 153 clearly told that one singular uncommon peculiar symptoms is the sufficient for prescription. And first caption in the search of homeopathic specific medicine, then he started one singular like that, uncommon peculiar symptom is sufficient. But apart from this, if that uncommon peculiar symptoms leads to medicine, but we have to judge that there is any contraindication of that medicine. So totality of the symptoms always reveal the content. Through this, we can came to know the contraindication. If there is a contraindication of the higher symptoms, that is mental and like that, we should not give that medicines. There will be court failure. Anyway, totality of the symptoms they reveal that sometimes not only for the prescription of homeopathic medicines, the totality of the symptoms always recover the past history, family history, and through these we also, those who are classical homeopaths, they also aim to the miasmatic diagnosis. And through this miasmatic diagnosis and the symptoms reveal that we came to know that which miasm on the surface. So we do the practice like that. Anyway, we should not always, we used to make totality and long test taking, especially from chronic disease. It is not like that. In acute disease, we also try to make the totality of the symptoms. Otherwise, we might be failing. And even acute case, we also consider even the mental symptom too. Anyway, and even told in epidemic disease where we have to make a genus epidemicus, on that part we also do make the totality of the symptoms. And throughout the organon, master even introductions, then following aphorism 6, 7, and following in different from 6 to 213 section, Handyman given much more importance to totality of the symptoms and how you make it the totality of the symptoms. Even Bogar also give importance also pathological general or pathological totalities. And we also apart from Handyman and Boningashans also gave some criteria of totality of the symptoms, that is locations and modalities and concomitants. Through these, we can also try make the totality of the symptoms. And Bogar also gave the 6 hexagon quiz Kuamoto like that. Through these, we always try to make the totality of the symptoms. Totality, if we all make a bias, that some having some intuitions that some through symptoms and through mental makeup, gesture, postures, they make a prescription in a shortcut way. But it is not like that, especially those who are related to the institutions. Because Handyman from a section 2, mostly highest title of clear that our prescription should be easily comprehensible principle. What I prescribe that my student should know, and in which angle I am prescribing, that should be clear before our coming homeopaths. Otherwise, we make in his own way. It is not like that. Then a system or a science will not be advanced at all. Anyway, totality of the symptoms we make a different angle, and to make a totality of the symptoms, we have a highest grade of patience, and we have to learn the patient's complaint, and then we write down, and from this method we do. Handyman clearly given guideline during case taking, how and what patient, how you give much more time, and what patient you should not give time, and through your totality of the symptoms, that the patient which is actually suffering from disease or not, few patient will be failing, few patient was actually disease, And through totality, you came to know easily that is the case of indisposition. It's no need medicine like that. Some patient will come for your attention, for your care. And even my master, even I came to know from Dr. S.P. and others that you cannot make totality of a case in a chronic case or in mental case in a single visit. So you have to give time. Then when a patient will make a report or friendship, then he might be vomit out even his remote concealed complaint before a doctor, and then he can get rid of many complaints. Even Kane says that a good case taking is a half cure. If you make a good case taking and you listen ill, and many times it will be clear many things. And even your hospital and outdoor, you always look after the eyes of the patient and his gesture, postures, everything. It will reveal to you. And through you, we always remember that to being a good doctor or to be a homeopath, we have a profound knowledge of medical science and other allied alliances. We have to, in this modern era, many patients can hide and their social status and mental symptoms. Actually, we many times we cannot get properly, but it is your skill and art how to extract his original mental symptom and which is setting in his will part of the person. So if we get the will part of the person that it is really changed, then you can easily prescribe and your prescription would be very much valuable and right. And even you when we gone through the Pierce Smith art of interrogation and art of case taking, that Pierce Smith having the profile tackling one lawyer case, and he came to conclusions. Then he get help of the iris diagnosis, and from this iris diagnosis he came to know that the lawyer having some perversions. So for that clue, he prescribed and cured that case. So even we in section most of 95 animal shows in chronic disease, in many times we have to depend on the sign. Symptom might be diluted, so we have to depend on the signs. So signs will never be erase or as a don't take it otherwise. जे हम लोग जब पाप करते हैं, गुनाह करते हैं, उसको कुछ सबूत तो रख जाते ही है, और क्रिमिनल ये में तो है ही, जब कुछ क्रिमिनल होता है उसका कुछ कभी ना कभी सबूत रख ही जाते हैं. Anyway, and it is also very much critical part of the make a totality of the symptoms, that is in cases of one-sided disease. In one-sided disease, first time we make a with a few symptoms, we have to prescribe based on the partial totality, incomplete totality. Then we give one medicines, then it will be come out other symptoms time to time. Then gradually we came to know the total picture of the patient. So then we make a totality of the symptoms and then we prescribe a medicine. And I also came across, I appear in especially university exam, and especially on our organon part, that we have some dilemma between totality of the symptoms and evaluation of symptoms. Many was in favor of that evaluation of symptoms, first come then totality. But my teacher told that first we make a totality, and then from through totality we pick out characteristic symptoms, And from the characteristic symptoms, we make evaluations. Evaluation means which symptoms will belong, categorically we divide which symptoms is mental, and from mental which is belongs to will part, which is belongs to understanding and which thing to memories like that, and then other physical generals. And from physical generals, each particular symptom is characteristic. Then of course, in many times that we belongs in and they are the general symptoms are physical general, but it should be characteristics should be very much prominent. Sometimes we have to prescribe on the particular symptoms, then which is very much characteristic and having some modifying or uncommon. That is swelling, inflammations, like that rhythm pulse, inflammation, swelling, patient very much burning, but when you touch that very cold to touch. The particular symptom is very much important to prescribe rhythm or like that medicines. So we cannot ignore the particular symptoms even if it is a uncommon, peculiar characteristics. And we many times we ask the student in exam, then when a particular symptom becomes general symptoms, that if a complaint patient shows, that is like that burning. If burning presents in eyes, if burning presents in throat, if burning present in stomach, if burning present in thumbs and soles, then the burning becomes the general symptoms. So it is your art and skill how you make particular symptoms to the general. And burning asans, if you came to know that time, though Keynesian and other not in favor of that the doctrine of analogy. The two doctrine of analogy, he imposed to complete is the 4 criteria: location, sensation, modalities, and concomitance, where he won't get any part complaint with modalities like that. Then he imposed the other parts modalities to that part. So he tried to make complete symptoms and totality of the symptoms. Anyway, for this totality of the symptoms, we make a very cautious and we have a very much profound knowledge about case takings and even serious patients, how to tackle and how to you extract the patient's complaint from judicially and rationally, and because you unnecessary questions sometimes make it embarrass to the patient. So your question should be to the point or relevant to the case. And my teacher, my sir guidance was like that. When patient will giving the particular complaint, you listen very sincerely, as if you are thinking his complaint as your own. Because many times we might be professional, especially in practice life, in also a hospital, we have tackled to so many patients. So we should have a lot of patience. What patient is talking. If I saw that I am not giving important or my involvement is not like that, patient will not be satisfied. So my involvement always should be serious and sympathetic one. Professional we should be, but we should be give attention to the patient very seriously. Anyway, so from my experience, my teacher experience, when patient is complain particular complaint, we very much sincerely listen one by one, and then we all of a sudden is not ask any private questions. When you finish the case taking, then in email, then if you need it, then you ask his menstruation complaint, his marital status, his pregnancy, like that. And when you finish all things, then you ask his mental symptoms. It is my advice that we should, first of all, if you come to the patient comes is very much irritable, impatient, and you find the bacha does not want your attention like that, then is not another thing. But in cases of chronic case or other case, if a sophisticated, if a elite class, then you all on a sudden you don't ask mental symptoms. If you won't, if you find that it is not better that first visit to ask mental symptom, let free and then the patient to get rid of his sufferings, he or she voluntarily vomit you or told you your is remote mental symptoms, if any disappointed, easily extramarital affairs like that, then you will note down it. It is my advice that you first time ask mental symptom, you might be jeopardized. First you ask, then gradually, if female is sensitive, if you need his ask to know his private oriented complaint, that is menstruations and other, you ask. And whenever patient seeks your attention alone, you judge it that you alone, or you know that we are the all know the medical ethics to examine a female, all are unmarried and like that, or any cases of fibroadenoma or like that. So we need some female attendants help, even mothers or nurse, if nurse not, then mother or any female attendants to complete his investigation. So to make it totality, not only we ask subjective symptoms, but we also rely on objective symptoms. So we cannot any negative things that objective symptoms will not need like that. We also take it in consideration, because physical findings many times help us to make the totality. And to make totality, of course, in homeopathy, we always based on mental symptoms, of course, and in acute cases, we can make it totality very fast, because everything is very much prominent. So we cannot ask so many questions, because patient comes and he complain, and then we can easily prescribe aconite, belladonna, because patient, if we know the medicine and the patient picture clearly, so they automatically reveal the medicine. So always remember, we always make a totality in a very crucial way, very critical way, and so we make a complete. Then the pictures and we pay our prescription always might be judicial and rational and about future generation. And many times when I prescribe that, I told my student that I found this and this, and so I prescribe. And to make a totality of the symptoms, not only for prescription, I also related with the repertory department. So totality of the symptoms, a good case taking, a good make totality, then we make a transform into in proper rubric. So totality of the symptoms also help for repertorizations. So on the part of repertorizations, we also should make a good make a totality properly. Otherwise, if not totality is make it properly or incorrect, then repertorization will be incorrect. So in this way, we make a totality of the symptoms, and even again I am told here that with the all are qualified homeopath, they should be they follow, and we should not be ignore other systems. Handyman also told, my teacher told, and even I found those who are belongs to other systems, say allopathic, they are knowingly unknowingly do some homeopathic prescription. They also make totality like another way. And even especially I hear in Itanagar RK missions, our secretary Mohan is also belong to allopathic doctors. He is passed out from NRS and also passed out from AIMS, but he is a deep respect, and he used to took homeopathic medicines. And when I interaction, he knows much more than me regarding homeopathies. And like my teacher of Banerjee and he, that to be a good and super class homeopath, our brain is not like that. My Osid Banerjee said that IIT brain like that should be done homeopathy, because it is a so fine art and it is super science. So the master brain like handyman and those, I don't criticize my fellow, because we have so many came across good homeopath. Even my teacher was DMS Osim Banerjee, and when I pass out MD, when I attend her clinic outdoor, he repeatedly told me, you already passed MD, why you should come, and don't say like that, because I came across even MD, PhD, that they won't differentiate even Rastax Briania. So they having some knowledge like that. So even with the the history of homeopathy, that our stalwarts, especially those who are renowned homeopath, maximum was that you converted homeopath, because they know the knowledge of disease is very much, and what is uncommon to the patient, what is the patient symptoms, they can easily screen out, so they can prescribe very correctly and judicially. Even I found one patient, one converted homeopath, when he diagnosis typhoid, and in past week that it is found the loose to it streaks of blood, he are asked other no question, he prescribed Rastax, and it is a miracle result. So, and even we came across the negative generals, that negative generals means understand that in a disease where the common feature should be present, if it is absent, then it is negative, and it is for homeopathy, it is a very much immense value for prescriptions. So we should do like that. So we should not have any negative values, and you should not criticize other systems. We should be a good homeopath. We should abide by the guidelines of especially our master handymen, and how to make a totality of the symptoms. And he also give advice from introductions and from the last go to organon, and apart from the master handymen, Dr. B.K. Sarkar, Dr. Stuart Close, Dr. Robert, and they always also makes a different way how to make the totality of the symptoms, and they all do someone logically, someone systematically, and everyone told is good totality, always reveal the patient pictures, and as well as disease pictures. And in homeopathy, especially, we related to two types of totality of the symptoms, that is qualitative totality and quantitative totality. We should not ignore both of them, because qualitative totality always reveal to individualization, and our homeopathic prescriptions is a immense value for qualitative totality. But quantitative totality we should be considered, because in this era, through the quantitative totality, we diagnose the case. So on the diagnosis part, we always keep in mind that is the quantitative totality. Through quantitative totality, we can easily diagnose the patients. From the diagnosis, we give the guidelines, what disease and what is the prognosis, what the diet should be, diet and regimen should be maintained like that. So we should not ignore, we need that quantitative totality too. So In this way, so to be a homeopath and homeopathic physicians, we should not be biased. Want to be someone having some intuition like that, someone patient came to close, and that is we many authors told that Hosity Begum, and then we prescribe phosphorus like that. It is not like that. Then we might be court failure. Some close friends might come to my close. That is, he's not that amorous like that. So we have to judge. Otherwise, it will blunder mistakes. So totality, if we make totality, then we have a very few chance to make any blunder or mistakes. And if we know that the picture of any renowned person like that portrait, only we came to very few things. But when you came across his personal life and we came make a report, then many things will be came out from his. And even I was in Calcutta Homeopathy Medical College, one very soft, very docile young chap came to visit my teacher, then got case taking. My teachers having some confusion and some. Then he told him to leave, and he asked his wife, his personal life. Then he told he's showing soberness, gentleness outwardly, but when we came to close in bed night, he used to kick out from my bed. So it is like that. When you deep interactions, then we came many things, and that real picture that, and we always that will part, especially on mental will part, we cannot hide. In any time, it will be revealed. So we having some skill, we having some tact that we can extract that will part of the persons that, and our prescription will be much more correct and perfect. And when we came across the mental disease chapter, Hahnemann clearly told that if we found that a uncommon peculiar characteristic mental symptoms, it is sufficient to prescribe that very medicines. And for this instance, I giving one example of cases. That one cases is running side by side with Natramure and Pulsatilla like that. And when patient, even Kent was a very much dilemma, which medicine he will prescribe at that time. Then at that very crucial time, he asked that very woman, if someone give you console, what is your act? Then and then that woman answered, I hate consolations. If anyone give me consolation, I won't like. So, so it is not hesitation to any homeopath to prescribe Natramure like that. So mental symptoms, even in acute cases, we have a very much importance, and we have in our Calcutta, especially West Bengal homeopath, many one told that we have been stamp out that tension homeopath, but few of them also, when we are in MD, that few are also in favor of Richard Hughes's pharmacodynamics, they prescribe it like that way. Anyway, at any angle, we have to make totalities in physiological, biochemical, pathological, at any modes, in unconscious patients, subconscious patients, deaf and dumb patients. So we have to make anyway to prescribe, because unless we make a totality of the symptoms, we won't make individualizations, and until unless we individualize, we should not we can't prescribe any homeopathic medicines. So this is my honest, humble request to my juniors that they should make a totality of the symptoms. Every case, they should not be biased. Like Kent advice, we should treat every case as a new case. We have, of course, lots of now this times having reference, but we always, even in my hospital, I always try to take as far as possible. Then we deduct and make it. And in homeopathy, when you are a very much senior expert, that I found my teacher of Gynaecology, when he the patient when told, then he asking such a question. Through this question, the eliminating process was started. Through this elimination, when he came to conclusion, then we are attending that OPD, we then very deliberately, very easily can give the name of the medicines, and then it is the art of taking how you make it your medicine very vivid and clear and very correctly. If you're test taking, you're asking question, will like that. So today or tonight I make it late, and so in this with my thanks, I am ending and my subject lecture. And if any question to ask, then you have a liberty. I am ready to give answer.
Still, I think everyone will bear with us the problems that we had faced during the last 1.5 hours. However, he has nicely why a student of homeopathy. I should say student of homeopathy because we, the homeopaths who have already passed the examination, we are also the students of homeopathy because we are learning each and every day from each and every patient. And that is the one of the motto of the homeopath, to be a student, because if you stop learning, then your activity of the brain, your eagerness to learn something will end, and that will the end for a homeopath, because more you learn, more you becomes enriched, and that will be reflected in your practice. So each and every clinician, homeopath, but in particular, and also the students who are also online here, the totality of the symptoms, nicely expressed by Dr. Krishna Mohan Das, in relations with the organon of medicines, in relations with the other allied subjects like pathology, practice of medicines, gynecology, even the psychology. When all are incorporated, then it gives an overall portrait of the disease of the patient who is suffering from some particular disease. That is the nosological nomenclature of the disease. But each and everybody is suffering in their own way. That is the main thing. So totality of the symptoms denotes actually the totality of the characteristic symptoms. Hahnemann mentioned it. The totality already mentioned by Dr. Krishna Mohan Das, that he has mentioned it in the aphorism 7, but in the aphorism 258, so far I remember, he has also mentioned that actually totality of the characteristic symptoms, and this is the key words in homeopathy, not only in the aphorism 7, but in several places scattered all over the organon of medicines. Hahnemann mentioned the totality of the symptoms, and this is the key point, the key word, the key guideline for a homeopath to prescribe with in unprejudiced manner and unbiased way the correct, rational, and judicious medicine which is required by the patient in hand. So, proper understanding of the totality of the symptoms, we have to perceive the case in a holistic way. The holistic philosophy of life is very, very important because when a student enters in the first year, he learns the totality of the symptoms in his own way because he is only exposing himself or herself to only 1 to 70 aphorisms in the first phases. So now the totality is something else to him. When he exposes to 71 to 145 aphorisms, then the meaning of totality is somewhat bigger, somewhat more deeper. But when he completes the organon of medicines, then the totality, concept of the totality gradually changes. And when he accumulates the or corroborates with the knowledges of the practice of medicines, pathology, gynecology, surgery, everything, then the meaning or perception of the totality becomes something else. And after passing out to the BHMS, when he faces the patient alone in his chamber or any other OPDs, then the totality becomes something else. So this perception is very, very important. So perceptible signs and symptoms are very, very important, and how to gather them and how to analyze them. There is the analogically and analytically to collect and corroborate with the case is very, very important. So physicians, the main object of the physicians, as has been mentioned in the first aphorism, is the physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health, to cure as it is termed. Now, this as it is termed is very, very important phrase in our homeopathy. In aphorism 7, Hahnemann has mentioned that totality of the symptoms has to be met. Definitely, we all agree that totality of the symptoms has to be met. But here, two things has Hahnemann also incorporated in the aphorism 7, that where the no manifest exciting or maintaining cause has to be removed, the totality of the symptoms is constituted by outwardly reflected picture of the disease. He has mentioned now, with regard being paid to the possibility of a miasm and accessory circumstances. And these two things are very, very important. This possibility of a miasm and accessory circumstances, because in case of acute disease, Dr. Krishna has already stated that the making a totality comparatively is much easier because everything fresh in the memory of the patient, and the symptoms of the patients, in particularly in the acute disease, are very, very prompt, very, very pronounced, very, very sharp, and so they strike directly in the perceptions of the physician. Even if there are any causative modalities, or if there are any causations of the or exciting factors, or even in the maintaining factors, then he spontaneously states it to the physician. So it's very easier, comparatively easier rather. I must not say it's very easy to prescribe, but comparatively easier for the patient to convey it to the physicians because they are fresh in the memory. But when it's a chronic disease, he's suffering for a prolonged period, not only for months, for years, for decades, or so on. Even there are so many diseases which the patient at the age of 50 may tell you that I am suffering since my childhood like this, or from the very beginning of the years, I am suffering with this. So now the question may arise, how the memory will help that particular patient to describe all her symptoms to the physician. Now it becomes a very, very difficult task for the physicians to gather all the symptoms, and out of which, in particular, he has to gather the characteristic symptoms of the case. Sometimes this defining the symptoms as characteristics is very, very important and very, very critical in terms of the physician, because we, the individuals, have also, the physicians also are actually, this individuality not only belongs to a person who is diseased, but also a person in health has its own individuality. has his own rationality. So each and every physician, according to his rationality, classifies as well as analyzes the case. Why I am telling according to his rationality? Because almost each and everybody in this earth has got some bias. If the persons are free from bias, free from prejudices, then 10 or 20 or more homeopaths, when analyzes the case and rationalize the characteristics symptoms, it becomes a single prescription. But if we put the same case to different physicians, we may get 5, 6, 7 or more different types of prescriptions, because we are not free from bias, we are not free from prejudices, we are not rational in our own way. We also have some parameters. When all the parameters are same for each and everybody, then there will be a single prescription. But we are little bit different from others, and that's why the prescription also may vary. But however, when we are dealing with some subjects like organoid of medicine, or in particular when the totality of the symptoms have to be made, then definitely we have to be, as far as practicable, free from bias and free from prejudices. Now, these accessory circumstances. What is the role of the accessory circumstances? We know that in the aphorism 5, there are description of the accessory circumstances. I'm not going into the detail, but these accessory circumstances, how it influences the case. Yes, these accessory circumstances influences the case definitely. How? Because it may increases the malady, they may favor or hinder the treatment, or sometimes they may pose as obstacles to the recovery. And sometimes they may require to be encouraged or modified. If you go through the 208 aphorism, it has clearly been mentioned by Hahnemann that this accessory, the role of the accessory symptoms in a particular case of disease. So, accessory symptoms plays an important role in making the totality of the symptoms, because Hahnemann in person has particularly mentioned that we must pay our regard, or we must regard the presence of the accessory miasms as well, accessory circumstances, and the possibility of a miasm in that particular case. So when the acute case is concerned, when the miasm is acute one, and when in case of the individual acute diseases, we must study the cases individually, and the making a totality becomes very, very easier. But when there is an epidemic disease or sporadic disease, then some problems actually sets in. What's the problem? Because in cases of the epidemic and sporadic diseases, oftentimes it is seen that the people, due to some prejudices and bias, try to find out whether such epidemics or biases has set in the previous era. But when we study the cases properly in making the totality of the symptoms in epidemic and sporadic diseases, it is quite immaterial whether or not something similar has appeared in the past. It has been clearly mentioned by Hahnemann. So we have to look up to that. It doesn't matter whether such or similar epidemics has prevailed in the past or not, because the novelty and peculiarity of the disease in a present epidemic makes no difference in examining the case as well as in treating the case. In a very recent years, in the last 3 years, we have observed that during the epidemics of coronavirus, it was the novel coronavirus, because such type of epidemics has never been appeared in the past. So people were really in trouble in making the totality of the symptoms in case of the epidemic disease and in projecting the genus epidemicus. But if you study the disease properly, unless you study the cases, multiple cases, then it's very difficult to make a general epidemics, because theoretical discussions never make a general epidemics out of the so many hazardous problems. So you have to remember that every prevailing disease is in many respects a phenomena of a unique character, and it differs vastly from all other previous epidemics. And keeping the thing in mind, we have to study the epidemics in that particular way. So when we study the totality of the symptoms, what is the motto of the physician? Here, the holistic conception should always be kept in mind. We should not be dealt with, or we should not be swayed by the notions of the modern medicines that the diseases of the hand or diseases of the abdomen is totally different from the diseases that are occurring in the chest or lungs or heart or in the kidney. It's not only in case of the physical ailments, but also the changes in the dispositions and mind of the individual. It is the psychological problems that are prevailing in the patient. Also, is a part of the whole. Hahnemann and Snidely stated that no whitlow or no words can take place without the participations of the whole. So this conception is very, very important in making the totality of the symptoms, because if we just consider the disease to a particular part or particular organ or particular system, then the whole thing will be a mess. We will be far away from making the totality. So holistic conception is very, very important. Later on, while discussing the different myosomes, Dr. John Henry Allen used a terminology which is very, very important, that is the biotic whole. We have to consider the individual as a biotic whole. Neither of the parts are separate from the other. They are correlated, they are coordinated in an individual. No skin disease or no local disease can appear without the participations of the whole. In the one-sided diseases, as has already been discussed by Dr. Krishna Mohandas, that yes, in case of the one-sided diseases, sometimes it happens that only one or two principal symptoms or most striking symptoms appear, while others are not at all coming into the fore. So we have to deal with that particularly, because in such cases, making the totality is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult, because one or two symptoms cannot express the whole individual. But the patient are expressing only one or two principal symptoms. In such cases, we have to go, or we have to tackle the case with, to begin with, we have to deal with that particular two or three symptoms. We cannot say that this is the totality of the symptoms as per se in relation to the individual, but we have only to deal with the two symptoms or three symptoms. We have to fight with them. We should find out the most similar medicine from our materia medica, which should suits best to that particular two or three symptoms. And symptoms should be complete one as far as practicable. Vague symptoms should be avoided, because we have already learned from our very beginning that general symptoms are less important in relation with the particular symptoms, rather the individualizing symptoms. So a symptom must be full in all respect in relation with the location, sensations, modality, and concomitant. The particular four legs, though many of the view that these were propagated by Dr. Boningosens, but if we just consider the case-taking portion of the organon of medicines with vividly we study the footnotes, then it's very, very clear that Hahnemann has, though he has not mentioned the location, sensation, modality, concomitant, but during his descriptions, he mentioned all these things. How a symptom should be made complete. During studying of the practice of medicines, we have studied that whenever we are examining a case, we should go for inspection, we should go for palpation, auscultations, percussions, all these things. Hahnemann, without mentioning that particular phrase or terminologies, he has described all the things vividly in his case taking portion. So we have to think about that in making the totality. In the aphorism 95, he has interestingly mentioned one thing, that during case taking, the patient usually expresses the mostly annoyed, actually, who is the mostly suffering portions or most suffering symptoms of him or her to the physician. The symptoms which are least important, which he feels or which she feels, because the least important means they are not much annoying the patient. Due to the long suffering, either they have forget it or they think that all these symptoms or sufferings are part of our daily life. Oftentimes it is seen that these particular symptoms, which goes by the name of the lesser accessory symptoms in homeopathy, helps in individualizing a case and becomes a prime symptom in making the totality. Aphorism 95 definitely states with that, because the patient did not mention it and doesn't want to express it to the physician because he thinks that it's not so important. It becomes a part and parcel of his daily life. Or due to the long used or long suffering, they don't consider the symptom to be of much importance, and that's why they refrain from mentioning it to the physician. But that should be kept in mind and should be taken into consideration while making the totality. So totality, in fact, can be made in several ways. The totality in acute disease is something different. Totality of the epidemic and sporadic disease is different from those of the individual disease. Totality in chronic diseases are also different and most difficult part. So before making the totality, we have to go for the case taking properly. If we can collect or gather the symptoms rationally, we can analyze them, then definitely we can reach or we can hit the target without prescriptions. In the aphorism 104, I think, he has nicely mentioned that when the all the symptoms of the patient have been collected in relations with the individual cases, the most difficult part of the treatment has been accomplished. When the picture or portrait of the disease is accurately sketched, the most difficult part of the case taking is accomplished. Why? Because now all the instruments required to make the totality is in our hands. Because it will guide him to the selection of the remedy. So lesser accessory symptoms definitely plays an important role. Another thing we have to keep in mind that when Hahnemann has already mentioned it in the seventh aphorism, that regard being paid to the miasm. Actually, I am not going into the detail because I am just putting into the highlights the regions which have not been covered by Dr. Krishna Mondas. Actually, it's very difficult to finish all or discuss in detail the totality of the symptoms within 1.5 hours, because totality of the symptoms is a vast thing and it is the sole thing that homeopathy deals with. Unless and until we make the totality, we will fall short of our goal. So, however, this miasmatic analysis is very, very important because Hahnemann has clearly mentioned that there may be theoretically patient may suffer from single miasm, but practically it's not possible nowadays because most of the cases, almost all the cases, are multi-miasmatic in nature. But when the three miasms, psora, syphilis, and psychosis, enters within the body, they usually doesn't make any true amalgamation. They choose their own seats and resides over there, and time to time they raise their heads while the other symptoms are kept in abeyance. So when psora is in activity or becomes a predominant miasm, then the other two miasms are definitely kept in abeyance. And vice versa, when psychosis raises its heads, then psora and syphilis also become subdued. But now, in a chronic case, when two or more miasms are present or miasmatic states are there, then definitely sometimes psora may prevail and sometimes the psychosis or syphilis as per the atmosphere of that is the internal environment of the patient. So they are the opportunistic miasmatic states. When they get some favorable conditions, then they raise their heads, and the other miasms are definitely get subdued. So the predominating miasm usually supervenes when the patient comes to us with certain symptoms. They definitely comes from that particular suffering or particular annoying, the symptoms which are annoying at that present condition belongs to the predominating miasm. But the basic miasmatic symptoms may have the psychotic symptoms or the syphilitic symptoms when the psoric symptoms are predominating, because it's a multi-miasmatic case. So in making totality, we have to be very cautious. Why? Because Hahnemann clearly stated that we should not try to uproot or modify all the miasms at a time. We have to deal with the predominating miasm firstly. After hitting with correct prescription, the predominating miasm gets subdued. Then, according to the suitability or according to the environment prevailed, the other miasms raises its head. Then we have to hit that particular miasm with another prescription. But if we try to cover all the miasms at the same time, then the totality will be a bizarre one. We won't get the proper totality. Because if we collect all the psoric symptoms, psychotic symptoms, and syphilitic symptoms and make a bundle of it, then it will be a quantitative totality. The artistic prescription will be at fault. Because our sole aim is to subdue or deal with the predominating miasm at present. So we have to hit with prescription the predominating miasm. So in making the totality, if we overemphasize over the basic miasmatic symptoms of the psychosis and syphilis at that particular time, then there will be a wrong prescription and wrong totality. So totality of the symptoms should be met with the aim that so that the present predominating miasm gets hit by the current prescription. So I think in this way we have to consider the totality. In one-sided diseases, there are so many different types of totalities are there, because it may be an internal disease, or sometimes there may be some external complaints in one-sided diseases, which goes by the name of the local disease. So one-sided disease definitely poses some obstacles for making the totality as a whole. So we have to deal with the limited number of symptoms. And when we just cover the limited number of symptoms, in few cases, it may happen, in few cases, that particular 2 or 3 symptoms, when we just select the similar one, then there are every chances of cure. But in most of the cases, it happens that the imperfectly selected homeopathic medicines, depending upon the particular one or two symptoms, produces so many accessory symptoms. And these accessory symptoms are nothing but the symptoms of the medicine as well as the symptoms of the patient. And there is a mixing up of the symptoms. So we have to make the totality considering all these things at that particular case. So making the totality depends upon the nature of the disease from which the patient is suffering, and each and every patient never exposes or never reveals all the symptoms to the physician. So we have to be very, very cautious in dealing with that. But in each case, whenever there are some alterations in the state of the health of the patient, either following first prescriptions or after undergoing certain changes of the environment, a fresh examination of the case to be done in order to know the status morbi of the patient. And after considering the status morbi, a second homeopathic remedy is to be chosen. It is not only for a non-miasmatic medicine, but also for the miasmatic medicines like antipsychotic, antipsychotic, or antisyphilitic. So, holistic conception of disease is very, very important. So, the holistic conception of the life and its modifications in health and disease, usually, it is the key thing in homeopathy. So, when particularly in the local or the one-sided disease with some local symptoms comes to us, it may happen or it may seem to the physician that besides giving the selected homeopathic medicines internally, the same medicines, particularly in case of the local disease, may be given him externally so that the cure is hastened up. But it is not the case, and it is never admissible in case of the homeopathic prescription. I am not telling these things to my colleagues or the experienced teachers or other practitioners, but it's very, very important for the students who are also in the, hearing this session, because it may seem to them that it may act better, the same medicine when given internally and externally. But Hahnemann, particularly if you go through the, I think it's 197 aphorism, you will get it that this type of treatment is quite inadmissible in homeopathy, where the same medicine is given internally and applied externally for the local disease. It may complicate the case. So, simillimum selection depends upon actually the totality of the symptoms. More specifically, the totality of the characteristic symptoms. And here, no paltry prejudices should intervene. The case should interfere. I think I have already stated many things regarding totality of the symptoms and why it is important. I must conclude here because Dr. Kalyani is here to share his knowledges. I must refer to Dr. Kalyani. Please.
Thank you. Very, very thanks, Dr. Choudhary, for giving unique experiences and detailed knowledge in our researches. And many thanks to today's brilliant speaker, Principal Dr. Krishna Mohan Das, for giving his experiences nicely explained. Though there are constraints of internet system, which is beyond our reach. Thanks to Souvik Halder for nicely inaugurating the session of the day. Equally thanks to all the viewers on screen, out of screen, those who will be later on. And not least, particularly thanks to our Dr. Mukherjee and his brilliant son, Dr. Mukherjee, for helping a lot for all this movie. What I like to share a little bit with the all brilliant experiences and information we already collected. Nice seminar today. That is, when I was proceeding for my postgraduate dissertation, my guide, Sahu, gave me a subject, you work on case taking. Then I was surprised. Very curious that I am working and teaching there and on research is giving case taking, a subject of the very early organ of juniors. Then I asked him, why are you giving case? There are so many subjects. Then he told me, it is the only constraint to homeopathic system of case taking. As you are coming from the effective institution, among the good students, you should work on this case taking. Our constraint is case taking. That's why we cannot go to totality of symptom. We are losing confidence. What when we started working for months together, I was surprised to learn from different solvers that how vividly, how details we are testing our different literature. In later future, I experienced that this direction, that case taking is our concept, is not the totality, because totality cannot be formed if the case taking is incomplete or partially completed, or not in detail, or there are some queries in the system, and totality is very difficult to be formed by this order from totality. And what I experienced that to make good case taking, not from all the subjects, especially physiology, anatomy, pathology, medicine, gynecology, surgery, is very, very essential. Dr. Krishna Mohan mentioned that we have seen that converted homeopaths are more successful in history of homeopathy. Why? Only because their expert in these subjects which support final case taking, that is physiology and as a pathology gynecology, because they are expert in common informations of the diseases. That's why it becomes very easier to collect uncommon characteristic symptoms of the patient. That's why it's taking to them for expert in all these subjects, paramedical subjects, means paraclinical subjects, they become more successful. So it is my earnest appeal to all the teachers among the alumni, all the persons who are related to the student to encourage them not to neglect physiology, anatomy, pathology, and other subjects, paraclinical subjects. If it is neglected, then it is difficult to become good homeopath. It means it becomes very difficult to take the totality of the case, homeopathic totality, with account with your symptoms. That should be emphasized to all the students. Keeping in mind, I had an ambition to keep a record that totality of symptoms is the only guideline for homeopathic cure. I started for a project when I was working on degenerative joint disease in natural homeopathy for 3 years, not very long about 6. I tried on spondylosis because degenerative joint disease is very common, very easily assessed, diagnosed. Means starting progress and improvement is easily accessible. I started spondylosis on cervical and lumbar spondylosis. And my target was, I will put an example that totally is marked. What I did, I keep some cases under control, assiduously. And I decided 3 common medicines which are thought for the updates of spondylosis. I assessed 3 drugs, hypericum, rostrum, and bryoline. The cases relieve and rest by pressure is by bryoline. Complaints aggravates by fast motion, relief by continuous motion by rostrum. Pathological lesions are very less, but complaints are worse. In comparison to pathological, complaints are maximum. Means hypersensitivity of the patient regarding neurological aspects. I don't know the cases or 3 drugs under this symptom. Means perfect modality and prescription. I tried with about 200 cases These three drugs for prescription by modalities and few companies favoring to this drug, and rest of the cases by complete totality. My result was after 3 years, including the placebo effect, that only 32% cases got improvement of complaints by specific drugs like Lactose, Briving, and Hypericum. 83% cases was improved clinically by totality of the symptoms, homeopathic totality individualistic single drug. And you'll be astonished to know, among the spot prescription is Hypericum, Rastasan, Briving. Not even a single case was radiologically better. All the cases were radiologically investigated before the treatment, during treatment, and after treatment in our department, with consent and opinion of the radiologist. And the cases which are dealt with totality of the symptom means constitutional drug or the selected homeopathic drug. More than 80% cases not only clinically improved and accessory complaints reduced. Many accessory complaints completely went off. But about 27% cases showed radiological improvement. The normal structure was regained by the homeopathic treatment osteologically. All the documents are with me and in the Department of Research in life. That proves that totality of the symptoms and only guidelines your patient. For prediction, for the timing, anything and anything will be thought of. But to cure a patient, physically, clinically, and radiologically, there is no other way than to take the symptom with homeopathic prescription. Homeopathy, I was just telling, homeopathy is not surviving by medicine. Homeopathy is not surviving for homeopathy is not surviving for medicine prescription by modalities or other indications. But homeopathy is surviving in the world till now despite all conflicts and fights. Only because it can cure acute cases, chronic cases, which are called to be incurable cases. So to succeed on the incurable chronic and acute cases, our only guideline is totality of symptom. To get the totality, we must have knowledge and case taking. To have the serious case taking and complete perfect case taking, we must have the knowledge of physiology and gynecology. Because it makes us very smooth, easier to find out homeopathic symptoms, ignoring common clinical or other common. So, dear brother, we are all aware of this case taking. This is simply risk coupling. As you have heard that if you put Ganges water in a bottle and keep it on the rack, within a very short time, the mud, the silicone settles down, and the Ganges water doesn't look like Ganges, sacred Ganges water. It became a transparent drinking water. That happens to us. During practice, we settle down regarding case taking. We are not that much serious regular case taking. We settle down our mind settles down to spot prescription, quick prescription to get quick relief. But if we take bottle of water, Ganges water, for once or twice, again the appearance of the transparent bottle water becomes like that. It keeps our face and we can use it to make the water. Likewise, this case taking to be resampled takes more than times to keep in our mind the only identity to test the symptoms. Because if you take hundreds of fever cases, if you feel thousands of diarrhea cases, people will not come to avoid many other doctors. But if you have only one case which is chronic disease, not cured by modern medicine or conventional medicine, to any patient, single patient, not only that patient and his family will come, but the person who will listen that incurable cases, declared incurable cases has been cured by this person, only the doctor, which will come from very distant. Day after day, your name and name, but you want to go on disease. as you all of you have seen, when it was starting in holidays, where there was no communication, it was beyond our expectation. Patient will come in that desert land of holidays during those times, 1985. But nowadays, you see thousands and thousands of people are coming to treat, to be treated in an OPD from from distant states, Bangladesh, Bihar, Odisha, people are coming to be treated there. So why? Because not because hearing of fever and this and diarrhea, these and activities or soft prescription, but because we practice in our natural homeopathic prescription by casting and protective symptoms. So in homeopathy, the only guideline to make us half in protective symptoms to come to a perfect conclusion of a drug to keep ourselves constantly progressing. Thank you very much. Nice seeing me today. Request to all the alumni to come forward as a speaker, inaugurator, or moderator, whatever. Please come. We are not searching for brilliance, but we are searching for many speakers, many persons to participate, to encourage us and to be encouraged, to make this platform as a wide platform by sharing our experiences to enrich all of us. Thank you very much. Bidyut, please.
Dr. Kalyani, before concluding, there are two questions from the audience. Whether I don't know whether Dr. Krishna Das will be available online or not. Probably
He is having some network issues, sir. So he had informed me.
okay,
That's why I had
okay,
requested you, please answer the questions if fit.
okay, okay. The first question is, how can collect totality of symptoms from feigned diseases contain patients in one or two visits at clinic? Yes, very good question. Actually, totality of the symptoms, particularly when the feigned disease is concerned, mostly these diseases are chronic in nature. And Hahnemann has rightly stated that when we collect the symptoms from the patient, we should rely upon the expressions of the patients and detailing of the patients. We must rely on his own words, except in cases of the feigned diseases. If we just go through the two aphorisms, 89 and 98, the whole thing is very, very clear. In 89, he has clearly mentioned that in feigned diseases we should not rely upon the expression of the patient. We should corroborate it with the description given by the attendants and relatives. We should not rely upon him if we suspect that it's a feigned disease. So it is totally upon the discretion of the physician to diagnose that it's a case of the feigned disease, or the patient is somewhat not giving him the exact description, or something is fishy is there. Then he may corroborate the same symptoms or same expressions of the patient with his relatives or attendants. This is one thing. Second part of the question is whether it is possible to collect the totality of the symptoms or to make the totality of the symptoms within one or two visits. Actually, in case of chronic diseases, it is oftentimes seen that it is not only the first or second visit, it may require 3 or 4 or more visits in order to get the complete picture of the or portrait of the disease, complete picture of the disease or portrait of the disease, so that we can make a correct prescriptions. Oftentimes it is seen that in the first 2 visits or 3 visits, we oftentimes give the patient a placebo in order to get the true picture of the disease. Particularly the patient comes from some other physician and taking some medicines, oftentimes we just prescribe for the first 7 or 10 days a simple placebo, so that the medicinal effects gradually wind up, and then we can get the exact picture of the disease. In case of the feigned disease also, in first 1 or 2 visits, it may not be possible to get the proper picture or portrait of the disease, so that we can hit the case with the correct prescriptions. So this is the one thing. Another question was there, when nosological diagnosis is there, then how to make the totality, or like that. Exact question just off from the screen. Okay, I am just getting the question.
Now it's on screen. Now it is on screen.
Okay, okay. What are the roles of totality of the symptoms when nosological diagnosis reports available? Actually, nosological diagnosis and totality of the symptoms are two different things. Nosological diagnosis is always required, because we, the physicians, have to mention the nosological diagnosis in our prescriptions. Now, nosological diagnoses are based on some the common symptoms of the disease, but we have to made it out the uncommon peculiar symptoms, characteristic symptoms that has been mentioned in the 153 aphorism. So these two things are different. Hahnemann rightly stated that we should go for the nosological diagnosis, but we should not mention that it's a case of typhoid. Rather, he asked all the homeopaths to mention that it's a kind of typhoid, it's a kind of diabetes mellitus, it's a kind of thyroidism, hypothyroidism, sorry, it's a kind of duodenal ulcer. Because in homeopathy and nosological diagnosis, these two are never meeting in the same point. Nosological diagnosis are meant for diagnosis of the disease portion, and we are searching for what is uncommon peculiar in that particular case of disease. Say, for example, a patient of duodenal ulcer, when nosological diagnosis is made with the help of the endoscopic reports and others parameters, the common symptoms usually we get in case of the duodenal ulcer, the pain, the hunger pain, or pain in the empty stomach, or when the patient remains without food for a prolonged period and it is relieved by eating. Or the patient may be associated with some acidity, hyperacidity. Definitely heartburn refluxes are there. But these are not enough for a homeopathic prescription. So nosological diagnosis and totality of the symptoms are not the same thing, because only on the nosological diagnosis the homeopathic prescriptions cannot be met unless and until we make it out the uncommon peculiar characteristic symptoms of that particular case suffering from that particular nosological diagnosis. And that's why in homeopathy, a patient, so 5 or 6 patients suffering from the typhoid fever requires 5 or 6 different medicines. 5 cases of the duodenal ulcer may require 5 different kinds of medicines depending on the uncommon peculiarity of that particular case in hand. I think the thing is clear with the questioning. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much for all the speakers for your time. The moderator, our president Kalyani sir, and all the persons who had made this show possible. We regularly are facing challenges from various corners, but with mere determination and teamwork, team wins together, each or everyone achieve more. That's the basic concept, what we all feel. And it's our honest request, like what our sir, Dr. Narayan Kalyani had requested, all come forward and join this network. It's a networking of like minded people across the globe who had been a part of NIH in the past. Very recently, just yesterday, the convocation ceremony of 28th batch had been completed. So, starting from first batch of Deep NIH way back in 1977 and 28th batch of BHMS after the first batch started in 1987, 10th of December. Yesterday, 25th of February, the 28th batch of UG had completed. So the foundation laid by Master Hahnemann and the foundation laid by the stalwarts of Indian homeopathic community after creation of National Institute of Homeopathy and now again the satellite unit at Delhi, Narela. So homeopathy is flourishing and it will flourish in the future. We from National Institute of Homeopathy Alumni Association have taken a vow to promote, propagate, and showcase the alumnus of NIH through our CMEs. We are proud to have today Dr. Arijit sir, our speaker, and also in several upcoming CMAs, we'll be having the creators of the alumnus, that is the teachers, present or past teachers of NIH, who will be joining us as moderators or inaugurators, like in the past 65 CMEs. So, with the permission of Kalyani sir again, we like to say goodbye to all, and we'll be meeting again on 12th of March with another exciting set of topics and a couple of speakers, I presume. Kalyani sir, let's call it
Okay.
a night today.
Goodbye. Good night to all of you. Thanks to all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thanks for watching. I hope you have enjoyed today's CME. Yeah, there were some technical issues and network issues too, for which we had to delay. And so, with this, it's time for our post CME talks. And until then, meet you in our next CME. Until then, it's me, Medico Mukherjee, leaving out.